It's the Oakwood Cemetery fencing. And Mr. Cridlin, I think that is you. Page 43. That's a 4 and a 3. Mr. Cridlin, do you wish to present this report?
Sure.
Thank you.
Through the chair to county council. I will be brief. As council will recall, during the 2018 capital budget session, the talk about a possible privacy fencing, additional tree planting along the south border of Oakwood Cemetery, bordering the north side of the new subdivision, was discussed in detail. So as a result, there was a brief meeting on site with the Ward 5 councillors and the mayor, and those councillors had asked the staff bring back a quick and dirty report on what it would cost to put a privacy fence along there. Staff had calculated roughly $23,000 will be needed. That will build us a wooden privacy fence, which is approximately 420 feet long, at about $50 a foot was the market price we got. And there is, I believe, $1,000, $1,200 in there for additional planting of the trees to thicken the vegetation buffer as well. So I think the report is self-explanatory. With that, I'll turn it over to County Council for any questions you may have.
Mayor Luke.
Through you to Mr. Cridlin, I just quite didn't catch the length of the fence.
Through the chair, approximately 420 feet of fence will be
I heard
needed.
the 20, thank you.
Further comments, questions? Councilor Geisens.
Why doesn't the developer have some skin in the job here? As far as I'm concerned, I think it should have been his job that the fences were put up, not necessarily that we had to. So I'm wondering, have we talked to them at all about it and saying, you know, you need to put up a fence here?
Through the chair, I'll start the conversation off. Being fairly new to the game, I think it was disclosed in the budget session that the developer did give up a 15-foot land buffer, I believe, as part of that, and staff at the time had figured the 15 feet would be enough for privacy. I think the issue here is the grade difference, where the cemetery is probably 5 or 6 feet higher than the rear lots, and we look over top. Going further to the west on the south edge, this should not be a problem because there is no grade difference that we can, we won't have the privacy issue, lack of privacy.
Okay.
Councilor Sonnenberg.
Thank you. Are we talking trees and fence on the same line, or a fence here and trees there?
Through the chair, presently in the 2017 budget, there was money for a fence which is at the bottom of the slope, and we'll call that an encroachment fence, which kept the homeowners from encroaching onto the cemetery property. And part of that budget, there were a line of trees that were planted on the north side of the fence. However, I think the issue is in 10 to 15 years from now, as those trees fill out, they will act as more of a privacy. So we're talking about filling the holes in the trees now to gain some there, but the privacy fence will be needed so we can get the privacy. We won't have it with the trees alone.
Well, just speaking from experience, I planted trees when I built my house, and I'm astounded as how fast they're growing. I'm just wondering if we couldn't just wait to let these trees fill in, or aren't there enough of them?
Through the chair, I personally, staff feel we should have a few more trees, and I think, again, the elevation difference, these trees are starting 4 or 5 feet down, so it's going to take them that much longer to grow up.
Councilor, did I get you, Councilor Black? Well, why don't I get you?
Can I move the motion, the recommendation?
I don't see why not.
Well, I'd like to move the recommendation in the report and speak to it, if you get a seconder.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Councilor Black and Councilor Brunton, and
Well-
now you may speak.
Well, you're right, Councilor Geisens is right. I don't know what happened there, but yeah, there should have been a contribution more than just the 15-foot buffer, and maybe they thought that the 15-foot buffer would have dealt with it. And in hindsight, if you go back, Doug actually recommended that we buy, town of Simcoe buy more property. That didn't happen. So here we are with the development, and I don't know about the rest of the councilors, but I know the mayor and I know Doug myself are receiving some calls from very, very concerned people about the privacy, very emotional, very upset. And on the north side of the cemetery, there is a privacy fence along there. And backs right up against residential properties. And I think I wish we didn't have to put it there, but I really think it's something that is necessary. And like Mr. Cridlin said, the situation at the one end, it's high, and they're looking right over into the cemetery, and there's just absolutely no privacy for the people that want that, with their loved ones being buried there. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Well, I'm going to support the motion, and I guess Councillor Geisens again hit it on the head. And it's too bad, and I'm certainly not blaming Mr. Cridlin for what happened up there. I'm sure he's just got to correct the problem, but should have been the developer. We should have got a bigger buffer and a better fence right from day one, but why that happened, I don't know. Thank you.
Hindsight's always wonderful, isn't it? Mayor Luke.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to support this motion, and I've got a couple of comments to make. Number one, that issue was brought up when Satya came to this council, well, not this exact council, I've lost my wig here. Lose your wig. Mr. Chair, it was brought up. I'm not going to say any more, but I knew this was coming. And so it is what it is, and it's not the developer's fault. They got the deal, we signed it, and here we are. I wanted, if I may, just for a second, tell you a phone call I got yesterday morning. This lady, I have her name here and phone number for anybody that wishes to call her. She called me, and Councillor Brunt, you and Black have been around town a while. Her parents operated Zoli's restaurant for a long, long time. So this is the daughter that called me. Rose, you know Rose. And she said I could use her name, but anyhow, after all these years, her parents have been in this community working hard to run a successful restaurant. Her dad passed away last week. The private funeral was along the south end of Oakwood Cemetery behind the homes there. For the entire funeral, private funeral, the 20 minutes to bury her father, there was nothing but pounding of nails and pounding of nails and pounding of nails. She wasn't worried about the children in the backyard or the closeness. They're there, and what are you going to do? She thought the pounding could have stopped, and she recognized there's construction going along that end. I am prepared, and I know this will go into the capital budget, and it'll be a subject. If this motion is passed, Mr. Chair, it would be going to our budget on the 24th of January. I'm prepared, because you're going to hear me continually say this, and you're going to get sick of me saying it, when the money gets real tight there at budget time, real tight, I'm going to even suggest that we take the 23 for the fence out of the 50 and spend the 27 balance on the east side, because I think this is a more important issue than what we're doing on the east side. So there might be some room to dicker there. But this is a problem that people that have purchased lots long before the construction started, long before the site plan, the rezoning took place, they have a right to have a little bit of privacy when they are there for burying or visiting their loved ones, period. 15 feet does not cut it. It was wrong. So I'm going to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Oh, Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Mr. Cridlin, I know we want a buffer there as quickly as possible. Any thoughts about the size of the trees that we plant? Like, I take it we want a tree spade in there to do this work, and that's probably why this extended project is costing that much, is because we are going with tree spade trees, large trees?
Through the chair, the trees, because there are some trees there now, we have to plant within the other trees. The trees aren't really the big ticket item here. It's the 420 feet of fence at approximately $50 a foot to install. That's the lion's share of this cost.
So it's not the additional trees, it's primarily the fencing.
That's correct. Staff, and I think the counselors that were there, I think give these trees another decade, and they're going to come up and fill a lot of that in. We just want to get privacy sooner than later there.
Well, maybe the builder could at least supply the wood for this fence.
Any further comments? Oh, Councilor Sonnenberg, I do have you down.
I'd just like to comment on what the mayor just spoke of about the nail pounding. As superintendent of the Waterford Cemetery, I would have gone over to the construction site and just very kindly asked them to cease and desist for 15 or 20 minutes while there's a funeral going on. And I think they would have complied. And I think that's what the staff at Oakwood should have done. Thank you.
Councilor Black, did I see your hand?
Just a question, just for further clarification from Bill. The height of this fence, is it 8 feet?
Through the chair, this is a I believe it's a 6-foot fence with, there'll be a foot underneath of it, so we'll probably about 7 feet at the top,
Okay.
6 feet.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor of the motion? Those opposed? Motion is carried. That brings us next to page 51, please. Page 51 deals with the accessibility compliance reporting. And who would be that person? Sir, then, you are now on. Page 51.
So before I sort of proceed to get into the report, I wanted to introduce council to the person who's sitting to Shelley's left. And his name is Sam McFarlane, and he is the Supervisor, Accessibility Compliance and Customer Communications. And I'm not sure whether council has met him before, so I wanted to introduce him to you. And he has worked on this report that I'm sort of about to speak to right now. So we have accessibility compliance reporting obligations every couple of years that we have to do under the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disability Act 2005, commonly referred to as AODA. And the report has 20 questions. So the report in front of you is the result of the answers on behalf of Norfolk County to those questions, and it identifies that we are a non-compliance situation on 2 sections referred to 17A and 17B in your report, and specifically they sort of relate to the same thing, and that being Ride Norfolk. And so the first piece talks about the electronic pre-boarding announcements, and the second one talks about ensuring that destination points or available route stops are announced through electronic means. And now the intention of that is being met with verbal announcements at this point in time. My understanding is that Ride Norfolk is managed through a contract, and so where we are right now is through Mr. Bill Kriblin's area. We're working with the contractor to make sure that we're looking at ways in making that compliant and making sure that we're working towards being able to report compliance in the future with 17A and 17B. The other piece identified in the report that we're non-compliant with, and I'm going to read this out, and that is the Information and Communications Standard of the Integrated Accessibility Standards Regulation. I tried to memorize that a couple of times, but I figured reading it out might be a little bit easier. And that pertains specifically to the website and the content we have on the website. And the goal by January 1st of 2014 to have all the information we have on our website to be 100% accessible. There are sort of 2 concerns with that. One is a lot of the documentations that is available on our website some of it is actually ministry provided documents, and on occasion financial spreadsheets that at this point in time do not exist in an accessible format. And the second piece, and what we're looking at more actively, is through wanting the website to be as dynamic as possible and us wanting to relate as much information as possible to the public, we have a significant amount of people who are able to upload to the website at this point in time. Perhaps, and it appears individuals who do not necessarily have the ODE training. So you have that sort of action in the report identified as that effective January of 2018. We unfortunately will be taking away access from those staff who do not have the training from being able to upload to the website. So on a go-forward basis, we'll be able to control that significantly more and ensuring that the people who do upload have received the training in making those documents accessible. And we're free to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions? Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize to Yucca for having my back to him, but just in your comments about the last potential non-compliance with the website, did I hear you say that some of what's on the website that is non-compliant or not fully accessible are ministry documents?
Right, that's correct. So there are documents from Chris Baird's area, there are documents from Lee Robinson's area that do not exist in an accessible format as they're provided to us from the ministry, and documents that we essentially have to upload as is.
Okay, and that is my point. I'm surprised to see that the provincial government isn't sort of meeting its own standards, if I can say it that way, that they're providing documents that are inaccessible to our local clients. There seems to be a bit of a double standard there to me. Is that a fair statement, Yakov, in your opinion?
I can tell you certainly we've had significant discussions at SLT and our struggles with that very same fact and our frustrations with essentially having to upload those documents as is, as they're provided by the ministry and them not being accessible.
Chairman, my only further comment, and I would encourage staff to express that concern to any ministry of the provincial government that provides information to us to be uploaded onto our website. The province should be making those documents in that format before they even ask us to post them. Thank you.
County Manager?
On Friday, I had the good fortune to attend the meeting of the CAO group attached to the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus, and of course the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing sends 2 formal representatives, and I'm proud to announce that we as a group went at them really hard exactly on that topic, because we're all looking at our accessibility compliance, particularly with respect to our websites. This is an area of focus for the senior leadership team. We are contemplating a number of ways to improve the overall site compliance, the portions under our control, but at the end of the day, we can fix all of ours. You're exactly correct, Mr. Deputy Mayor. The hypocrisy of forcing us to put non-compliant documents out available to the public is staggering.
Ms. Downington?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and if I may add to the county manager's comments as well, every document that we are aware of from the ministry, we raise that issue specifically with the Accessibility Directorate, so they are aware each time we run into this issue and we advise them.
Thank you very much. Councillor Black?
Your representative on the Advisory Accessibility Committee, I had my eyes opened today. I did ask Sam a number of questions on the website compliance, and because I didn't really understand exactly what's involved in making it compliant, and it involves a lot of training for staff to manually enter information. It's like redoing documents over again, and it sounds to me like a horrendous task, and that everyone else in the province is having the same problem as we are. So I think this is something that's very unreasonable to ask us to do and be compliant with, unless the province provides some kind of a program to make it a lot easier that anybody can do it, rather than have special training and to manually have to enter all of this information in an accessible format. It's a task that it just blew my mind when Sam explained it to me.
Thank you. I just have one simple question. Compliance reporting requires two individuals in the organization, one to answer and one to record. About how long does this take?
Through the chair, we do our preliminary investigation on each of the answers, and then we fill it out electronically, and then the clerk certifies that report and submits it.
How long?
For the clerk to sign off, maybe 5 minutes. For staff, though, to do the analysis, it takes more time to get to the point where we are today.
Would that be more than 5 minutes?
For accessibility, for corporate support services, absolutely, because we investigate each question that's being asked. And I would say that generating this particular report, we probably have about 2 days worth of work into it to make sure that we can document all of the information so that when or if we do get an audit from the ministry, we have all the background information in our file. Once we get to that point and we bring the report forward to council, then we can authorize the clerk to sign off.
2 days. Okay, thank you very much. Any further comments? If not, do we have a mover? Councillor Black, do we have a seconder? Councillor Columbus, do we have all those in favor? By raising your hands, please. Thank you very much. We are now going to go, according to the deputy clerk here, to page 185. Public Works. I guess that would be you, Ms. Robinson. You're on.
Through the chairman to council, before you this evening is the report with respect to 770 Norfolk Street North and the second entrance. Council will recall that this came forward at a request. In summary, our current bylaw only allows one access for residential properties, and this particular property owner had installed a second entrance in accordance with the bylaw. There was no technical justification for the installation of the second entrance, and so staff were unable to support that. Only council has the authority to do that. We've reviewed it. This particular piece of property currently has an access onto an arterial road. In accordance with our official plan and best engineering practices, we discourage the connection to an arterial road at all cost. In this particular case, it's at the intersection of two arterial roads. So staff are recommending that the property owner be instructed to remove the entrance onto Norfolk Street North and the second entrance be permitted to remain, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Black.
Okay, thank you. So has the property owner agreed to this, to close the Norfolk Street entrance?
Through the chairman to council, the property owner has not agreed to do this. They wish to keep both entrances, which is contrary to our bylaw, and there is no technical justification for them to have a second entrance.
Before I guess I could agree to this, I'd want to know if he may want the Norfolk Street one rather than the 14th concession. And actually, when you look at, if you were to close the Norfolk Street one, it's very, I don't know how you're going to make that work, because the next door neighbor's driveway is like they're together practically. So I don't know how you'd close one and then you close it. He could still use his neighbor's driveway to come into his property.
Through the chairman to council, the second entrance was installed without the benefit of a permit. Although the property owner was well aware of the fact that the permit was required, they chose to do it anyway, and then are basically effectively are seeking forgiveness for their actions. Had they discussed it with staff, and they had discussed it with staff in the past, and we had indicated that we would not permit the second entrance. We'd also indicated that we would support an entrance if the one on Norfolk Street was closed. We would have no objections to one from the other side. If a private property owner makes arrangements to access their property across their neighbor's property, that's a matter for the private property owners to sort out amongst themselves, and we wouldn't be involved in that. However, we are required, excuse me, to ensure that every property owner has an entrance to their property, but we're not required to provide more than one entrance to their property.
Further questions? Councillor Oliver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Ms. Robinson-Lee, I saw the recommendation in the report, of course. What will satisfy staff that the Highway 24 entrance is ceased to be used? I mean, what are you going to require them to do, unless I missed it in here?
Through the chairman to council, we have not put forward a recommendation for how they need to close that entrance. Typically, in these cases, we'll work with the property owner because lots of times they have an idea that will satisfy staff that is acceptable to them. So we typically work with the property owner to find out how they would like to close that entrance, and then we'd be happy to discuss that with them. That way, we're not putting large costs on them if they have a solution that will satisfy our needs but is more conducive to their intended use of the property.
Mayor Luke?
The one question I have for Lee, when I'm looking at the recommendation, I'm having a little bit of difficulty with the fourth, I'll call it, section. It's my understanding that the Norfolk Street, the original entrance onto this property was Norfolk Street. And we know that this person went ahead, even though they needed a permit, did not get one, and went ahead with the second one. I'm having some difficulty that if this council says you're only going to be allowed one, that we dictate by recommendation which one we deemed he or she will close. Seems to me that the second one is the one that was put in without a permit. I am not in favor of saying the council revoke the entrance on Norfolk Street North. If one has to be closed and the resident chooses to close the one on the 14th, why would that not be acceptable to this council? Back to square one.
Ms. Robinson, please.
Through the chairman to council, the staff's recommendation to close the second one, to close the Norfolk Street one, as council is likely aware if you've driven by there, the entrance onto 14th Street is done with concrete. Quite honestly, they did a beautiful job installing that entrance. They did a very nice job, and they have a significant amount of money invested in that particular entrance. And staff feel, from a traffic perspective, from a traffic flow perspective, it makes much more sense for that particular property to enter off of 14th. If the property came forward today and requested an entrance, and they didn't have one at all, we would be putting them on 14th Street.
Further?
Well, my discussions with this property owner, I'm under the impression that if they had to close one, they would keep the Norfolk Street one and close 14th. I'm not for a moment saying that the 14th isn't better. It's further from the intersection. It's not as busy, the 2-lane there, as the 4-lane. They're both busy. I'm not saying that I wouldn't not want to close, if I owned that property, the Norfolk Street, but I believe they would want the Norfolk Street, so that's something I'm a little nervous. I guess the other thing, Mr. Chair, and I'm well aware of the policy, and I'm well aware you should have a permit before you do things, but I know there are people in this county that do things and then get a permit. And I also know that there are places that there have been curb cuts to a property when there should only be one. So I'm not just totally sure here, although I don't promote what has been done here without a permit. It's a tough corner to get in and out of either spot. I guess I'm looking for the safest thing to get people in and out of that residence, because it is a tough, tough corner.
You are
Thank
correct.
you.
I was up there today. Wow. Anyway, we have a recommendation. I think that most of us are in agreement. They should have one driveway. The question is which one? Or do you want the recommendation to stay as it is? And if so, I need a mover. And if you don't want that, I need a mover to change it. Councillor Oliver, please.
Chairman, I'll move the motion, I'll move the recommendation in the report, and hopefully there will be someone to second it, and then we'll see if a majority wishes to proceed with the staff recommendation.
We have a mover. You are going to second the motion?
No.
No. All right, well, wait a minute. We have a mover. Going once, going twice, sold. That does not carry. Where do we go now? Councillor Sonnenberg.
Well, I'm going to suggest deferral until we find out which entrance the property owner would prefer. We don't know that yet, do we?
Oh, Ms. Robinson may have the answer to that.
Through the chairman to council, if that is council's desire, I would respectfully request that you put forward a motion that recommends that staff be instructed that only one entrance to the property will be permitted, and staff are to talk to the property owner to determine which entrance they would like to keep. That will move it forward, and it still would achieve that goal.
Okay, so basically, we have a motion on the floor that's turned this over to staff, and that the idea being that they will have one entrance. We have a mover. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Columbus. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? You have that, Madam Clerk? Okay, that motion is carried. I think that brings us to page 191.
That mine?
And Dunville office lease renewal. That would be you, Ms. Miranda. You are on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report is requesting approval for a one-year renewal of the lease of with Haldeman County for the location on Forest Street East in Dunnville, with a one-year option to extend, to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the lease, and then to direct staff to analyze the accommodation options for this particular location. As council will remember, Haldeman County underwent accommodations review, and they have chosen and approved to centralize their administrative office in Cayuga, with a plan for that to be completed in 2019. That will change the utilization of this current location for Haldeman County. It is our understanding that they will retain that property, so space will be available at that point in time. Furthermore, Health and Social Services has outgrown this space, and there is a need to do an accommodation review and for the required space. However, there are many moving parts and unknown variables, as council is aware, and we continue to await several provincial announcements and some internal pieces such as the housing RFP, the expert panel and the regionalization outcome, the modernization standards of public health, and the social assistance modernization, the income security roadmap that has just come out that you'll see in short order in a future report, and the housing funding that we have recently received as well. With all of those unknown and unvariables, staff is recommending a short-term one-year lease with the option to extend for those reasons. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Councillor Brunton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Marlene. Marlene, I again apologize for not being there a week or so ago. But is there anybody else in this building besides our staff?
Through the chair to Councillor Brunton, this is a Haldeman County building. There is Haldeman County staff, and there is a small compartment that is utilized by the OPP.
Okay, so it's all government staffing. That's my point. There's no residential at all, or?
Through the chair, no, there is not.
Okay. And and again, I know you said there's many moving parts, but if we run into a situation where the province makes some drastic changes, is there any chance, like, would we be on the hook for the 12 months, or would they be willing to negotiate that on a month-to-month basis, do you think?
So through the chair, we haven't had those conversations with Haldeman, but we could discuss that. I would suggest that even if the regionalization of the expert panel does come through in 2018, it'll take us at least a month to work through those pieces. So at that time, once we have that information, we could have those conversations. And if we know what they are and we just need more time, we would have an option to extend for a year under this resolution.
Okay, well, I was just thinking, like, and again, I don't know what the province are thinking, but, and maybe Haldeman will be a little more flexible if need be. That's my concern. Thank you.
Councillor Oliver, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move the recommendation in the report on page 191 of our agenda.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sonnenberg. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion is carried. Now, basically, that gets us through the agenda. I think We will look at our pink paper again, and Madam Clerk, please.
Through the chair, as the chair just mentioned, the next part of the agenda to go to is closed session. So through the chair, I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for the following. That committee move into closed session at 8:33 PM to discuss matters pursuant to Section 239 B, C, and F of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, as the subject matter pertains to personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, or advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose.
Moved by Mayor Luke and seconded by Councillor Black. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? We are going in camera.
There's one with Chris. Oh, you're saying fix it for you. Yeah, sure.
So